Welcome back to Bible Shorts, episode 125, A Riot in Jerusalem. Well, in our last episode, we learned that a huge riot had broken out in Jerusalem. Paul had been seized by men who thought he had brought a Gentile into the temple, and while they were beating him and trying to kill him, news reached the commander of the Roman troops that the whole city of Jerusalem was in an uproar. The commander took some officers and soldiers and ran down to the crowd. The commander arrested Paul and had ordered him to be bound with 2 chains and taken to the soldiers' barracks. The crowd that followed them kept shouting, "Get rid of him!" As the soldiers were about to take Paul into the barracks, the commander had asked Paul, "Aren't you the Egyptian who started a revolt and led 4,000 terrorists out into the wilderness some time ago?" Paul had answered, "I am a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of no ordinary city. Please let me speak to the people." After receiving the commander's permission, Paul stood on the steps and motioned to the crowd. When they were all silent, he said to them in Aramaic, "Brothers and fathers, listen now to my defense." When they heard him speak to them in Aramaic, they became very quiet. Paul said, "I am a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city. I studied under Gamaliel and was thoroughly trained in the law of our ancestors. I was just as zealous for God as any of you are today. I persecuted the followers of this way to their death, arresting both men and women and throwing them into prison. As the high priest and all the council can themselves testify, I even obtained letters from them to their associates in Damascus and went there to bring these followers of the way as prisoners back to Jerusalem to be punished." And now we hear again the story of Paul's conversion. Paul told the crowd, "About noon, as I came near Damascus, suddenly a bright light from heaven flashed around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice say to me, 'Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?' 'Who are you, Lord?' I asked. 'I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting,' he replied. My companions saw the light, but they did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to me. 'What should I do, Lord?' I asked. 'Get up,' the Lord said, "and go into Damascus. There you will be told all that you have been assigned to do.' My companions led me by the hand into Damascus because the brilliance of the light had blinded me. A man named Ananias came to see me. He was a devout observer of the law and highly respected. He stood beside me and said, 'Brother Saul, receive your sight.' And at that very moment I was able to see him. Then he said, 'The God of our ancestors has chosen you to know his will and to see the righteous one and to hear words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all people of what you have seen and heard. And now what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name.'" And now we learn something that Luke did not mention the first time in Acts that he told this story. Paul says to the crowd, "When I returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple, I fell into a trance and saw the Lord speaking to me. 'Quick,' he said, 'leave Jerusalem immediately, because the people here will not accept your testimony about me.' 'Lord,' I replied, 'these people know that I went from one synagogue to another to imprison and beat those who believe in you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I stood there giving my approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him.' Then the Lord said to me, 'Go, I will send you far away to the Gentiles.'" The crowd listened to Paul until he said this. Then they raised their voices and shouted, "Rid the earth of him! He's not fit to live." As they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air, the commander ordered that Paul be taken into the barracks. He directed that he be flogged and interrogated in order to find out why the people were shouting at him like this. When a centurion and some soldiers started to prepare Paul to be stripped and beaten, Paul said, "Is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't even been found guilty?" When the centurion heard this, he went straight to his commander and reported it. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "This man says he's a Roman citizen." Paul was correct. The commander and his troops could get into big trouble if they beat Paul. The commander went to Paul and asked, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" "Yes, I am," he answered. Then the commander said, "I had to pay a lot of money for my citizenship." "But I was born a citizen," Paul replied. Those who were about to interrogate him withdrew immediately. The commander himself was alarmed when he realized he had put Paul, a Roman citizen, in chains. The commander wanted to find out exactly why Paul was being accused by the Jews. So the next day, he ordered the chief priests and all the members of the Sanhedrin to assemble. Then he brought Paul and had him stand before them. While Paul was looking intently at the council, he said, "Brothers, up to this day, I have lived my life with a clear conscience before God." Then the high priest ordered those standing near Paul to strike him on the mouth. At this, Paul said to him, "God will strike you, you whitewashed wall. Are you sitting there to judge me according to the law, and yet in violation of the law you order me to be struck?" Those standing nearby said, "Do you dare to insult God's high priest?" And Paul said, "I did not realize, brothers, that he was high priest, for it is written, 'You shall not speak evil of a leader of your people.'" When Paul noticed that some were Sadducees and others were Pharisees, he called out in the council, "Brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees. I am on trial concerning the hope of the resurrection of the dead." When he said this, a dissension began between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. The Sadducees say there is no resurrection or angel or spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge all three. Then a great clamor arose, and certain scribes of the Pharisees group stood up and contended, "We find nothing wrong with this man. What if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him?" When the discussion became violent, the tribune, fearing they would tear Paul to pieces, ordered the soldiers to go down, take him by force, and bring him back to the barracks. That night the Lord stood near him and said, "Keep up your courage, for just as you have testified for me in Jerusalem, so you must bear witness also in Rome." In the morning, a group of Jews joined together in a conspiracy and bound themselves by an oath neither to eat nor drink until they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 of them who joined this conspiracy. They went to the chief priests and elders and said, "We have strictly bound ourselves by an oath to taste no food till we have killed Paul. Now then, you and the council must notify the tribune to bring him down to you on the pretext that you want to make a more thorough examination of his case. And we are ready to do away with him before he arrives." Now the son of Paul's sister heard about the ambush, so he went and gained entrance to the barracks and told Paul. What happens next? Look for Bible Shorts 126. The tribune listens to Paul's nephew